Yes, guys, I'm Si. Welcome to Cardiff City World. We are back again on a Friday night to preview tomorrow's lunchtime kickoff between Cardiff City and Middlesbrough, otherwise known as the Andy Campbell Derby. And we are very excited, very happy to welcome Nathan from, I should have checked out to pronounce this, but I'm going to go for it anyway, Boropolis. We'll go with that. How are you, mate? You good?
Perfect, mate. Yeah, busy day, being deadline day as well. But yeah, really looking forward to the game tomorrow.
Yeah, so obviously the kind of big news about this game, I guess, this morning was that your central striker was not travelling, and he was looks like he was going to Ipswich. I don't know if you're able to discuss what you were just telling me off air. If you can't, then just swerve it and we'll move on.
Yeah, it's been a crazy day on the transfer front. We've sort of got three players in our team that were sort of deemed untouchable before the window was even open. Really, Rav Vandenberg, one of our centre halves, Hayden Hackney, one of our midfielders, and Emmanuel Latte-Lath, centre forward, who you were referring to there, scored 12 goals in 13 games at the back end of last season, and started this season with the winner against Swansea on opening day, which you'll be quite happy about. And the rumour mill was swirling last night about Ipswich possibly making a bid for him. There was nothing really concrete until this lunchtime, which interest was confirmed. And then as the players were travelling down to Cardiff by plane this afternoon, it was reported widely on Sky Sports that he wasn't travelling with the team, which was a little bit scary for us Boro fans, losing our star striker with a couple of hours of the window left to go. But a U-turn has been made. He's no longer being sold. Ipswich, their bid was rejected. They aren't going to come back with anything more. And Emmanuel Latte-Lath, despite not being mentally right to travel earlier this afternoon, he's now decided he's back and raring to go, and he's going to be on a flight to Cardiff probably in the next couple of hours ahead of tomorrow's game. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether or not he makes the squad.
Yeah, it's a fascinating one because, as I said to you just now, it's not the best preparation for a game. I would assume at some point, because he didn't travel, you'd assume at some point he at least thought he was going to go up to Ipswich and talk to them, if nothing else. And you'd assume that probably if he's going up there and he's not traveling, he's probably thought he was going at some point. And then whatever's happened. We'll come to the kind of predicted teams and stuff like that in a little bit, but what's your feeling with it? Do you think he will start, or will he be in the squad, or do you think he actually just misses out?
I think he'll be in the squad. I think he'll probably be on the bench. We have got another centre forward that we signed from Bristol City, Tommy Conway, that has been playing sort of withdrawn behind Latte-Lath in the games that he has come on so far, but he is actually an out-and-out number 9 by trade. So I suspect that we'll see him make his first start tomorrow with another player behind him, and changes sort of further back in the team rather than up at the top of the pitch. So yeah, a very strange one, but I think he probably will make the bench. Whether he comes on or not, who knows? But it's just sort of good to have him involved and integrated back into the team, and hopefully he scores a goal and all is forgiven.
Mm-hmm. On Boro's start, so before we start the season, what have you made of Middlesbrough transfer window? Are you kind of happy with it, somewhere in the middle, or a bit disappointed?
Well, I'd say that before today, I was really impressed. I think that we've made a lot of signings that were made in order to improve the starting 11, really. We had Luke Ayling last season on loan. We made him permanent. We've signed a midfielder called Aidan Morris from Columbus Crew in the MLS. And yeah, these players that come from abroad. Sometimes you don't really know much of them, but from all the reports that we'd heard was that this guy is sort of the real deal over in America. He was in the MLS All Stars team, and he's only 22 years old. So, yeah, real sort of decent player in there to sort of bed in into our midfield for the next couple of years. With Johnny Howson being 35 years old now, and yeah, that was a real sort of interesting signing. Conway was a nice one to get through the door as a sort of a backup striker to Latte Laugh. Seeing the teams that we beat to his signature was really nice. Teams like Hull, who obviously spent very heavily last year, have got a lot of cash to spend. Teams like Norwich and yeah, real sort of statement of intent, I suppose, to be able to pull Tommy Conway in, a player who scored double figures in his first 2 seasons at Championship level. Yeah, it's been a real sort of impressive window from us, strengthening in key areas. And today we've seen that Ben Doak from Liverpool is coming in on loan as well. A player that's got a lot of potential and is highly rated by Liverpool, highly rated by their former manager Jurgen Klopp. So it seems like quite a coup that we've been able to get him in as well. But obviously, that one's yet to be finalised, so he won't be in the squad for tomorrow.
It's interesting because Middlesbrough's window, and also in some ways your start to the season, seems to kind of mirror Cardiff's a little bit. Like I think we've done the same. All the players that we've brought in, when they're fit and firing, I'd expect them all to start, maybe with the exception of one. But, Callum Chambers, Will Fish, Darland, Robertson, El Ghazi, Willock. I expect them all to be starters. So what that does is obviously strengthens your first 11, but it also makes your squad deeper, doesn't it? And I think Cardiff have addressed a lot of key areas. I think most people expected us to bring in a striker today. We've then pipped Sunderland to Simic from Salzburg, but we seem to be sending him straight out on loan to Belgium, which is a bit of a weird one because he's 21 or 22 and he's been playing Champions League football. So it does seem a bit odd that when we need a striker, we're sort of loaning him straight out. But I'm sure there's thought behind it. I know we've spoken to a few other strikers through the window, whether something happens tonight or not. To be honest with you, from a Cardiff point of view, I said yesterday and I said again this morning, if we can't get the right player in, I'm quite happy to go with what we've got, even though ideally I think we'd probably like maybe one or two more. I think also you have to understand, like, Rome wasn't built in a day. We are going through a rebuild. I think this season is a transition season for Cardiff, and whilst I do think we'll be up there because of the quality we brought in, I think that next season is going to be a whole different kettle of fish because we've got a lot of young players who are not maybe quite there, but 12 months time after loans and things, it's going to be an interesting sort of year or two for Cardiff, I think, if they can hold on to these players. In terms of the season, like what how do you feel it's gone so far? It's, like, on paper it looks a bit up and down. Obviously you beat the Jacks in the first game, but then haven't picked up a win since. Obviously had the heavy defeat in the EFL Cup this week as well. Like, how do you feel it's gone so far?
I'd say that getting off to a really good start against Swansea, it didn't necessarily matter how we performed on opening day. We just needed to get 3 points on the board. The last 2 seasons before this, we've started horrifically slowly and found ourselves in and around the bottom 3 after 10 games or so. So to get our first win on the board on game week 1 was really, really nice. And then playing 2 newly promoted sides back to back, going to Derby, and yeah, we got beat in the game. It was one of those horrible games where you make a mistake and you bang on the door for the rest of the game, and you just know it's not going to be your day. I think in that game, Derby had something like 3 shots in the entire game, and we had something like 15 or 20, and just couldn't break through. Had an offside goal disallowed, hit the woodwork in that game as well. Yeah, just a bit of a painful one. But then you hope, oh well, we can hopefully bounce back against Portsmouth at home last week, and the mistakes continued. Really, conceded after a minute, got ourselves back level, and then a mix-up between goalkeeper and defender, both coming for the ball, both make contact with each other, and it leaves Sadie just to tap into an empty net, and you're just chasing the game from that point, trying to get back in the game against are obviously newly promoted to the league and happy to sit in and just soak it up, and yeah, they've got something to cling on to then, so they just sit in. But yeah, we were lucky last week in the end to be fouled in the box. Isaiah Jones nicking a penalty like he did against Swansea on the first game of the season, and yeah, Tommy Conway off the bench dispatched the penalty. So yeah, 4 points out of a possible 9 so far. It's a strange one because it doesn't look like the best return on paper, especially when you take into consideration that we've played 2 newly promoted sides. But given I've watched us 2 seasons in a row fail to pick up our first win since the 7th game of the season, it's quite nice to have finally picked up a win within the first 2 months.
Yeah, I mean, again, in many ways, mirrors Cardiff start to the season, and I do think people like with 3 games in, like even the Burnley game, which we lost 5-0, 4 of those goals came from mistakes. 2 of them from really big mistakes, but they all came from mistakes. It's just Burnley were very, very clinical in punishing those mistakes, which you're going to get against a side like that. And also, like, we've played, I think, apart from the first half against Swansea, in most of the games this season, we've been all right. We've played quite well in bits and pieces. We haven't quite put like a full performance together, but also largely played with the same team as last year because the new signings are not up to speed. The centre back who came in against Swansea, looks real good. So that's a blessing because he's got a bit of pace. He's good on the ball. Suits the way we want to play. In terms of Middlesbrough, a couple of questions. I think one of them was from a Middlesbrough fan. I'm going to just bring it up there. He said, "Will Lardilate situation make fans turn a bit sour on him? Has his agent caused this to happen?" You'd be in a much better position to answer that than me because I'd have no idea.
I think in many cases, football fans are fickle, and the fact that it's sort of come up this late in the window, from his perspective, it's a Premier League side that has probably offered him double his wages that he's on at Middlesbrough, and obviously the lure of Premier League football. Obviously, every player wants to play at the highest level, so you can see from his perspective why he possibly would want to look into that possibility. But now that it seems like it's all been quashed and he's going to be part of the squad tomorrow, if he scores the winner tomorrow, every fan will be behind him once again. So yeah, it's a funny old game, football, how things can change so quickly. I imagine that if he scores a couple of goals in the next few games, then everything will sort of be forgotten about, really, until the next window, and then we'll see what happens from that moving forward.
The other question was Martin asked, "Is Hackney fit for Borough?"
Yeah, he will be. Yeah, he was left out in midweek of the EFL Cup game. It was a very sort of rotated side. he did that against Leeds as well in the first round of the Cup. Gave a few players a rest. Hackney was rested in that one, left out the squad completely, as was Seny Dieng, our number one goalkeeper. He leaves him out of the cup game squads as well. So yeah, Hayden Hackney will be fit tomorrow. He'll probably play alongside Morris in midfield.
Indeed, mate. Indeed. Michael Carrick, he's a manager who I really rate, and I hope, if you do get off to a bit of a slow start, that Boro as a club and the fans stick with him, because I think, long term, I think he's going to be an exceptional manager, and I think he's shown that already. When you compare, the Lampards and the Gerrards and the Rooney's sort of stints in the Championship so far, it shows the different level in coaching ability, in my opinion. Is he popular with Boro fans, and how would you describe how you expect Middlesbrough to play against us tomorrow? And is there anything different this season from last season in terms of playing style?
Yeah, the overall feeling around Carrick is the fans love him. From coming in, he sort of turned a squad that was very decent for the level. He turned it round by switching from Chris Wilder's 3 at the back system into a 4-2-3-1, and it stayed the same throughout, really, the 4-2-3-1. And it's usually with the right back tucking in to make a back 3 and the left back moving forward to create an extra body further up the pitch, and then your left-sided player inverts and everyone shuffles across. He's universally popular with Boro fans, and last season there was a little bit of a period in around February, March time where we really, really struggled with injuries, and he was having to put the same squad out week after week that wasn't getting results, that was probably out on the feet from playing in the Carabao Cup. We got to the semi-final of that last season, and we had like a Carabao Cup game on a Tuesday and Aston Villa in the FA Cup on a Saturday, and it was just ruthless playing against these sides time and time again. So there was a little bit of sort of speculation around his future at that point, whether Boro were going to maybe pull the trigger, but that's just fans having conversations because of poor results. And from March, when we played Norwich at home, we won that game 3-1. We lost 1 in 14, I think it was, at the end of the season to Leeds. We lost that game 4-3. So it was like a really, really good run towards the back end of the season. And going into this season, he signed a new 3-year contract at the football club in the summer. And this season always felt like it was going to be a big one, because he had his first season where he gained his experience. Last season, he lost a lot of his loan players, Cameron Archer, Ryan Giles, who was obviously with you guys. Chuba Akpom was here permanently but was sold last summer. It was a major rebuild, and we signed 13 players last summer, had to bed them in. Struggled somewhat. He lost a couple of players in January. Morgan Rogers, who's now at Aston Villa and pulling up trees there. Yeah, we lost a lot of players through injury as well. But this summer felt like a big one in terms of he's now going to have a settled squad. He's going to be backed this summer, which he has been, and it's now time to put up a proper result and hopefully fire ourselves into those playoff places. In terms of the way that we play, as mentioned, 4-2-3-1, we sort of have an attacking midfielder in Azaz that drifts all over the place. He'll play at number 10. Our player who usually plays off the left, who drifts inside, is Riley McGree, but he's currently out injured. So we may see Alex Gilbert, who played at Cardiff last year, scored a really good goal in the game in April and played in the cup on Tuesday night and was our best player on the pitch by a mile, really. And there may be a change at left back as well. We signed a left back in the week called Neto Borges from Clermont in France. Our left back at the minute, Lucas Engel, is having a real sort of rough period in form. He came on at half time on Tuesday night, and Stoke scored 4 of their goals down his side. It was a bloodbath for him, really. But yeah, we may see a couple of changes to the starting 11, but I'd suspect that we'd be pretty much full strength and similar everywhere else around the pitch that we have been in the first couple of games.
Yeah, so as I mentioned to you just before we came on, I was on Red Army TV last night doing the preview, and they mentioned that you've got some defensive injuries, and it might be a bit of rotation and a bit of this and a bit of shifting about and stuff. Do you think that's an area where Cardiff could look at that maybe they can, get at, I suppose?
Yeah, I imagine the game will probably go something like Middlesbrough having the majority of the ball. We usually do in most games, and with that, it'll leave space in behind us. And at the back, we are a little bit light in terms of pace of our players. Our one centre half that is fit, Matt Clark, is pretty good on the ball. He's a bit strange in terms of his build. He's about 6'4", but looks rather uncomfortable on the ball when realistically he is really good on the ball. Was at Brighton a few years ago, and if you're at Brighton, you're going to be good on the ball as a centre half. But the likelihood, I imagine, will be similar to last week, where Luke Ayling, who was Leeds' right back a few years back, he'll be filling in at centre half, and we'll have Anthony Dijksteel at right back, who has sort of been only thrown into games under Michael Carrick when we've had serious injury problems or suspensions throughout the squad. So yeah, it'll be an interesting one. I think that if you guys go with a lot of pace up front, you may have a little bit of joy on the counter attack.
So this is interesting because we tend to keep the ball a lot as well. We have a high percentage of the ball, so it's going to be quite interesting in that midfield area, because we brought in like Alex Robertson, who looks the real deal, very comfortable on the ball. I think even in that first hour or so against Burnley, we obviously were like a few down, and I think at one point we had like 60% possession in that game, even though we were losing quite heavily. So that'll be quite a fascinating kind of stat to follow in the game, with both teams liking to keep hold of it. I think if you'd asked me 2 weeks ago where I thought Middlesbrough would exploit Cardiff, I'd have said on the left-hand side of the centre-back area, because every goal seemed to be coming from there. We just mistakes and issues. But where we've brought in Jesper Darland, he really, really impressed against Swansea. Obviously, it was his first game, but he just looked the real deal, I got to say. And you'd like to think that, from a Cardiff point of view, that will cut the mistakes out by there, because you've got a very solid back line. It's going to be. I'm really looking forward to the game, because I think I titled this show, "Have these two teams been as bad as results suggest?" Because both teams, when you look at just the results, it's a bit up and down. Obviously, you've just had the one win, we've just had the one draw. But actually, when you look at it a bit more closely, both teams have played all right in most games. There's just been little mistakes, little issues which have been punished for it. I think a big thing for Cardiff is how they start, because if the manager picks on his kind of trusted and his favourites and not picks on form, I think that will automatically bring the crowd down, because at the moment the crowd is screaming out for Ruben Colwell to start in the number 10 as well. because he's banging form, he's young, he's strong, and he's quick and he's creative. And I think if he's on the bench like he was last week, I think that'll almost dull the crowd down at the start of the game. Whereas if Cardiff go with him, maybe go with like an Ollie Tanner or someone else on the wing who's quite pacey and aggressive, so that they're set up from an hour before kickoff when the team comes out. Fans are not stupid, so they'll see that side, and if they see an attacking side, I think the atmosphere is going to be bouncing. And I think if I was Errol Bullitt and if I was the Cardiff coaching team, my advice would be to be starting fast and try and get at Middlesbrough, because even though it was a rotated team, you did lose 5-0 on Wednesday. So, an early goal can cause issues, and defensively we can be quite solid. So it's like, that would be my plan, at least if it was me. My worry is that he kind of sticks with the same 11 he started with against Swansea, which didn't do it. It was when he made the changes that we really started to play. And even on Wednesday, we played basically a 23s team, apart from 2 players. And, they were excellent. They came back from a goal down 3 times, and then they just conceded 2 goals in the 94th and 95th minute through probably tiredness and Southampton Premier League team. So I'm very excited for the game, because I think tactically, which is right up my alley, I think it's going to be really fascinating. But also, I think both teams will be around the top 8. So I think Middlesbrough will definitely be in the playoffs, but I think Cardiff will be around the top 8 come the end of the season. And I keep telling Cardiff fans who are sort of panicking about this start we've had a really tricky start in terms of opponents. But like, you look at Middlesbrough you mentioned it, last season, didn't win a game for, 7-8 games?
Yeah.
And you still ended up having a fantastic end to the season. So it's not the be-all and end-all in terms of Cardiff have got to get a win. But I do think if Cardiff could pick up 3 points tomorrow, and more importantly, put in a good performance, I think the whole mood going into the international break changes. I think if we put in a poor performance and we lose, I think there'll be a bit of frustration there. But you mentioned actually Michael Carrick trying to bed in 13, 14 players last year. It takes time, and Cardiff have brought in, I think, 9 signings. Like, that takes time to get them up to speed, get them used to the manager, the teammates. So it's going to be an interesting one. So tell me what you think, or who you think is there. You already said what you think the team will be. Who's the man that Cardiff would hope to nullify in order to get the upper hand? Who's that sort of 1-star man that we should watch out for?
It's a difficult one. My go-to is always Latte Lath, because of his record at the end of last season. But now with the spanner thrown in the works today, I imagine Tommy Conway will be playing up front, which we haven't actually seen him play as the number 9, as I mentioned. He's been sort of withdrawn in the number 10 role in the short cameos that we have seen of him. But he was very, very bright in the last league game against Portsmouth when he come on, just getting the ball with his back to goal, constantly turning, constantly driving, quick, playing zipped passes out wide, trying to get us forward, trying to get us that goal back. So I'd say either Conway, who is a very, very energetic centre forward, or Hayden Hackney in midfield. I think if he gets control of the game, Middlesbrough will have a nice afternoon, really. He can get the ball and he can play forward, real sort of nice, intricate passes with his partner as well. And he can drive forward as well with the ball. He's got a real sort of deceptive turn of pace about him that sort of catches out other midfielders as he just sort of glides away from them and is then able to play nice forward passes into our left-sided or right-sided player. But yeah, I think that tomorrow it'll be a real interesting one in terms of you guys possibly having a lot of joy down our left-hand side, depending on who plays there. Obviously, your goal last week at Swansea came down your right, their left-hand side, with Tanner getting at their left back and crossing the ball. Our left back's just had a shocker in midweek, so if he plays, it could be an area to exploit. We may change that, as I mentioned. I don't know quite yet. But yeah, I think you have certainly got players that can hurt us. I think Robertson in midfield was a very good signing. Real sort of impressive from what I saw of him at Portsmouth last year. And yeah, Caldwell is one player that when I look at Cardiff and I see your guys' team week on week, and I see you on the EFL show and things like that, and I don't see him in the side, I think, why? He's been in and around the side for 3 or 4 seasons now. I remember that game at Forest when he sort of broke through and scored his goals. And yeah, he's just been in and out, hasn't he? So I sort of get what your fan base's point of view is with that one, that he's got bags of talent and sometimes he just isn't selected.
Yeah, I mean, my frustration with it is the second half of last season, we did fall off a little bit. Not a little bit. We had a real bad patch after Christmas, but it was like up and down, shall we say? But for me, whenever Ruben Caldwell started or came off the bench, the whole team looked better and more likely to score goals. And every time he went off, we became very blunt and uncreative. Now, that's not to say that he's perfect and he makes mistakes and whatnot, but for me, it's a no-brainer and he has to start. I was just going to ask you, before I say what team I would play, I wanted to ask you one question about Middlesbrough's midfield. What sort of age profile is your sort of midfield 2 and the 10? And is there a lot of legs and energy in there, or is it, more experience and things like that? Just kind of interested in that side.
Yeah, lots of legs and energy, really.
Right.
Hackney and Morris are the two that'll sort of sit a little bit deeper. Those are both 22. Hackney's just been selected for England under 21s. Morris has been in and out with America, both in their 21s and in their actual full men's first team.
Okay.
And then just ahead of them is Azaz, who is 24, I want to say. He was mainly known for his time at Plymouth in League One 2 seasons ago. And then he was there at the start of last season as well. And then,
sorry to interrupt you. Does Hackney play as the sitter or more of the sort of box to box in the two?
Yeah, Hackney will be more of the box to box, and Morris will sit as the 6, really. But they both don't necessarily mind getting forward. Both of them. Morris does as well. Obviously, we've only seen Aidan Morris play 4 games, really. So my real sort of viewing of him getting forward was at Derby. He was driving forward into the box, which we hadn't seen really from our other midfielder, which would be Johnny Howson, that was playing for us last season. Howson's been out injured, so being displaced by Morris in this instance. But yeah, they both don't mind getting forward, but the likelihood will be that Morris will sit as the 6 and Hackney will be the one that likely gets forward a little bit more.
So last year, and go back to Ruben Caldwell, actually, last year when we played, Ruben Caldwell did a real good job on Jake Livermore, who was obviously like sitting in front. I forget which team it was now. My memory's gone completely blank.
Maybe Watford?
Yeah, possibly. I can't. I think it's going to bug me. I might have to look that. But basically, Ruben obviously was playing in the 10, and he just didn't give him any time to dictate the play, and he broke up every time he got near the ball. So obviously he was doing his attacking job, but he did a very good defensive job on that deep lying midfielder. Now, the reason I asked about the legs in midfield is because I was trying to think what I would go with. And I know our defensive midfielder, Psyopis, has come through a bit of criticism recently for giving the ball away a lot, trying the Hollywood pass instead of the the 3-yarder to the more technical players. But with the legs and energy that's in your midfield, to me, it has to be Siopis and Robertson with Colwell in the 10. And Ramsey would have to drop to the bench. And our press, when Ramsey and Kanga were the sort of the front two, if you like, last week against Swansea, we just had no press whatsoever. And for me, if we need to play, I would play Joel Bagan at left back. I would play Darland and Chambers, Perry NG right back. I would play Siopis and Robertson as the 2. I would play Callum O'Dowda on the left wing. I would play Chris Willock on the right wing. Ruben Colwell at 10, and I would play Callum Robinson up front, because I believe that is a team that can defend, but also and hopefully Siopis and Robertson have got the legs and the defensive reading of the game to stop Hackney and Morris doing too much damage. But I also think Chris Willock and Callum O'Dowda can cause you problems wide, and then Callum Robertson and Ruben Colwell can cause issues with the press and the rest of it. We just look better with a mobile striker rather than a target man. So that would be my side. I don't think that Errol Bullock will pick that side. I think Errol Bullock will pretty much pick the same 11 that started against Swansea, with the exception, I think he might bring in Callum Robinson or Ollie Tanner out wide. But I think Kanga will play. I think Ramsey will play. I think Ruben Colwell will be on the bench. And I think it's a mistake. And I'll call it there now. And it'll be the same. If that is the team, it'll be the same performance until about the hour mark. And then you'll see a whole different Cardiff City. But just as we wrap up, mate, 2 things really. So I'm going to ask you a question to finish in a minute, where you've got 30 seconds basically to name as many players as you can who've represented Middlesbrough and Cardiff. Burnley did the same with Burnley and Cardiff. They didn't do very well. I think they got 1 off the top of my head. But also, give me your prediction for the game, please.
I'm brutal at predictions. I always get them wrong.
Me too.
I think I'll edge it 2-1 Boro. I'll say. I think we might see. I'm being hopeful after the day that we've had with Laugh and the links away. I'm hoping that it's just eradicated and Conway does all right and we win the game. But it honestly wouldn't surprise me if we go to your place tomorrow, put in a horrific performance, our worst performance of the season so far, and get beat. It wouldn't surprise me because it's typical Middlesbrough.
It's interesting you say that, because I've been saying all week on a variety of platforms, not just my own, that at some point in the next month or 2, it's all going to click for Cardiff and someone is going to take a bit of a beating. I actually like Middlesbrough, so in some ways I hope it's not tomorrow, but like also I think one of the reasons why I would make the changes that I just mentioned to the Cardiff side is I think an early goal for Cardiff and a fast start tomorrow might cause you some issues just because of what's happened this week. So we'll see. Technically, I went with 2-1 Cardiff yesterday on Red Army TV, so I think I'll stick with that for the sake of consistency. But a lot of it, I believe, will depend on the side that Cardiff pick, because if they pick the same sort of 11 that they did last week, the first hour will be very easy or comfortable for Middlesbrough on the ball. And I think for a side like yours, who's good in possession and happy to have lots of possession, but can actually use it, it's a dangerous game to play, to just sort of sit back and not press, and the crowd won't be happy. And there's that little edge to it that if they put in a performance like that, it could go the other way. But I am hopeful that after the performance of Ruben Colwell on Wednesday, he's got to start, surely. Nathan, 30 seconds then. In a minute, it'll start when I say now, and just as many players as you could think of that played for both clubs, Your 30 seconds will start in now.
Andy Campbell, Ryan Giles, Callum Chambers. I might be struggling now.
It's tricky though when you're on the spot. See, there's a silver-headed fox who played there.
I'll have no clue. Maybe before my time.
So yeah, but you might be a bit too young to remember him. It's a tricky one. I mean, if you definitely can't think of any, then I will allow you to pass. Don't want to
I'm sure we've got a right back.
You've got about 5 seconds left.
Yeah, I'm done. Three will do me.
You're top of the league, mate. Top of the league. Graham Kavanagh was one for a start.
Yeah.
Lenny Lawrence as a manager. I don't know. I probably would have given you that if you'd said that. I'm sure there's a couple of others, but off the top of my head, they were the sort of the ones that you said, and then the couple which I've just added were there. I'm sure there's plenty. I thought Willie Boland for a while, but I'm pretty sure he didn't play for Middlesbrough.
Wouldn't even know before my time, probably.
I was going to say, you're a bit younger than me and you, so it's interesting. There's a good nearly 1,500 people watching altogether, so appreciate everybody tuning in and get your predictions in on Twitter and YouTube and how you think the game's going to go. Cardiff fans, I'd really like to see the kind of side, the 11 that you would like to see picked, and whether you think Errol Bullock will make any changes. And we'll have an instant match reaction tomorrow from myself straight after the game, just a short one. And then Reese and Matthew will be back at 8 o'clock tomorrow evening for the full breakdown of the game. Hopefully Cardiff will pick up their first 3 points of the season. But Nathan, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you join us, mate. Thank you very much. And also, please tell the people where they can find your social medias, your channels, everything which you'd like to plug.
Thanks for having me, mate. Our sort of socials are at Boropolis, as you can sort of see on the screen now, alongside my name. So that's us on Twitter, on Instagram, and then if you put us in on YouTube and Spotify and other listening platforms, then you'll be able to find us on there. We've got a Boropolis podcast in which we'll be reviewing Cardiff, which you'll probably have to skip halfway through on Sunday or Monday, because we'll be discussing our 5-0 defeat in the AFL Cup to Stoke as well.
Well, I hope for your own sort of just enjoyment of the podcast that maybe tomorrow's not too one-sided, because you don't have to discuss 2 5-0 defeats in one podcast. Can you imagine? But no, I've done it myself recently. It's not the most enjoyable podcast thing to do. But we football fans, we love it. We live for it. Nathan, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, mate. And I'm sure we'll catch up for the return leg later on in the season. But until then, mate, you take care. Have a good one, and hopefully you don't get 3 points tomorrow. But best of luck for the rest of the season.
And you guys as well. Best of luck. Hopefully you finish above the Jacks.
Yeah, absolutely. They're going down this year. They are. On a serious note, they're absolutely dire, mate. I honestly I don't. For some reason, we seem to have a mental block against them, but they are poor. Poor.
They were poor at our place on the first game of the season. They weren't anything to shout about.
It was so frustrating last Sunday because every time we pressed Harry Darling, he fell over and got a free kick. But then every time we pressed him as the game went on and we got better, he just gave the ball away. And their keeper, they just kept giving the ball away, and it was frustrating because you're like, why aren't you keep doing it? Why are you sort of doing it, winning the ball, and then don't do it for another 10 minutes? It was infuriating. But we do seem to have a bit of a mental block against them at their place. But yeah, they're going down, definitely. 100%. But no, we'll speak to you soon, mate. Thanks for.
Thank you very much.